Dan Bowers, and I'm the president of Allied Arts in Chattanooga. And if Jim didn't steal my notes about him, this is Jim Hill, and I get paid for what I'm doing, and Jim's reward will be in heaven. So, but we're going to be talking to you about Imagine Chattanooga 2020, which is our cultural plan that we just completed at the end of 2011 and that we're in the process of implementing right now. But let me tell you a little bit about Jim, things that he probably would not want me to share, but I'm going to share them anyway because I'm thrilled to be up here on the podium with him. And then he's got a few things to say, and then we'll share the story with you. But I had not known this. I asked Jim last night, I said, where did you grow up? And he said, West by God, Virginia. So I will take that as West Virginia, that was your home. But Jim has an amazing vita. He got his master's degree in chemistry and got his MBA, and he spent 20 years in the Army, which is and retired as a lieutenant colonel. But the cool thing is that the last 7 years of his career in the Army, he was at West Point, and he taught. He was assistant professor of chemistry, but also assistant dean of academics there. And we first met in the late 80s. We both relocated to Chattanooga about the same time. He got there just a few months before I did. And but he spent 15 years with DuPont. He had been in Athens, Georgia, and I'll let him tell you a little bit about those things later, but arrived in Chattanooga in 87 and then retired from DuPont in 95. But what he has done since that time is equally amazing because he was the first president of the Tennessee Aquarium. I think most of y'all, and you're going to see some visuals of that in a little bit. He was CEO of the Lupton Company. Anyone who knows anything about Chattanooga, Jack Lupton is an icon, and the fact that he could survive 5 years as the CEO of the Lupton Company is pretty amazing in and of itself. He served on the lottery board. He was one of the original board members, has chaired that board. He was on the Tennessee Arts Commission as a commissioner for almost 8 years. Served a portion of a term. I think you said Ned McWhorter was the one that appointed you, but also chaired the commission. And he's been very involved with Allied Arts, has chaired our board. He's been involved in a lot of different phases of what we do. He was on the Southern Arts Federation board. He was on the NEA panel. He's no stranger to the arts and served numerous boards in Chattanooga. Very actively involved, very intimately involved with the transformation of Chattanooga, and just glad if y'all would welcome him today.
How do you go about feeling ill at ease for 4 minutes while somebody talks about how old you are because of all the things you've done in life? But welcome all of you here, and so we're going to do a little duet here today. I was mentioning in front of some younger people that we were going to do a Huntley Brinkley, and they looked at me as if they didn't know what I meant by Huntley Brinkley. So well, they didn't. Some of us are still alive. We had a challenge to talk about and give you intimate details of a 143-page document about the Arts and Cultural Plan in Chattanooga, or to try to put it in some sort of context and give you an overview of that plan, but to put it into the context of what Chattanooga has been in the past, what Chattanooga is today, and what we see Chattanooga needs to be in the future. So if you're wondering in these initial slides about why you're seeing all this historical look at Chattanooga, it's to put into context a very detailed plan that we've been working on for the last 2 years. So I'll let Dan start out with the history. And we're over here in the corner so we can see the slides as they go up.
And we will jet through this pretty fast. There's quite a few slides about the background the transformation that Chattanooga has been through and about our organization, Allied Arts. But if you dial back to the middle of the 20th century, Chattanooga was booming. We were a transportation hub, our manufacturing base was strong, employment was high, and we were growing. But then, less than 20 years later, we were in a steep decline to the point that Walter Cronkite famously dubbed Chattanooga the dirtiest city in America.
And I was in front of that same group of young people again, and I said Walter Cronkite, and they said, what?
And some of you may say, what? But so that was kind of the low ebb for us. But then between 1969 and 2000, over the next 3 decades, we turned everything around. We cleaned up the air and water. These are visuals of our community today. There was a true renaissance fueled by us refocusing on our downtown. The aquarium, our river walk, and the Walnut Street Bridge helped pave the way for this. Then came a downtown cinema. There were great restaurants and an outstanding minor league baseball park right in the heart of the city. And the community came together a lot. We're a gathering sort of town. Our community's renaissance has been and continues to be fueled by collaboration, and I think you'll witness that in these slides and then our discussion about IC 2020. So here's the contrast, and you can easily see the huge difference that happened over a couple of decades. Jim and I moved into Chattanooga right in the midst of this, 87, 88. I think within a year of us moving there, they had broken ground for the aquarium. And that was really the spark that shifted it from the things that you see on the top of the screen to the things that you see on the bottom of the screen.
So all of these accomplishments are brought about by our movement to Chattanooga.
That's right. That's right. We were the spark. They were in a bad place before Jim and I got there. No comment. And so this was really all fueled by a couple of community planning processes, and if you notice the dates, they actually happened before Jim and I got to town. A lot of work that became known as the Chattanooga Way. There was the Moccasin Bend, you'll see, is the river, the bend in the river, Moccasin Bend, and then an organization called Chattanooga Venture and an initiative called Vision 2000, and that is really where all of these ideas came from, including the Tennessee Aquarium. And that planning that went on in the 1980s, which resulted in a unified community vision, and that's very important, a unified community vision, and bold action led to the things that you see here, which is a stark contrast to the dirtiest city in America. And you see it here. These are all things that we're involved in. The lower left-hand corner is actually Pops on the River, which is an event that we at Allied Arts are chiefly responsible for, and that is a 4th of July celebration that attracts about 30,000 people, that our symphony plays, and there's fireworks, and it's the largest, one of the largest gatherings in the community outside of our Riverbend Festival. The return to downtown living has been a big deal. It was you could literally fold the sidewalks up in the evening when we moved there, and now it is animated almost 24/7. A lot of high-end.
Yes, very much.
Residential in our downtown. It's pretty amazing to look at the before and after. And if you look at the upper left-hand corner, this is what our riverfront looked like 30 years ago. And it was I had to go there from time to time, but I didn't want to go there, and it was a warehouse district and a bunch of dilapidated. But if you watch the transition that happens up in the upper left-hand corner, that's it today with the aquarium and our $120 million waterfront redevelopment. In the upper right-hand corner is, I believe that's Ross Meehan Foundry, which was nothing, and it is. Oh, excuse me, that was the side of the aquarium there, and you see how desolate that is, and how beautiful it is today. Lower left, I think that's looking down Broad Street toward the river at where the aquarium is, and that's an electric shuttle, free electric shuttle. So when you come to Chattanooga, you can ride that free all over town, no emissions. And the lower right is the what is now Coolidge Park, which our offices are near here. And there was actually an armory there, and today it is a great public park. So all of these transitions happened during this time. Again, upper left, a road, and we'll talk about this a little more in a little bit, that separated downtown from the river, and today there's a river walk and downtown housing. Upper right, this is the area that is just adjacent to the aquarium. Nothing wrong with the Goodyear store, but we enjoy this a whole lot better. Restaurants, and soon to be our Chattanooga History Center, which is part of Allied Arts. Lower left, just the river was not being used, and today it is. And upper right, things boarded up, and you'll see the restaurant scenes there. Again, and I'll not belabor this, but the upper left, this was way back in the day. That's our local United Way now. There was an 1883 building that our local Preservation Society bought this building, gave it to United Way. United Way ran a fundraising campaign, renovated this building, and it is a community asset now. The Walnut Street Bridge on the upper right, which was going to be torn down, the city was going to spend $2 million, I believe it was, to demolish the bridge. A group of citizens went and said, would you spend that same $2 million to renovate the bridge? And so instead of it being like this or being torn down, it is a pedestrian bridge now that I've been by it all hours, day and night, and there's never that there's not anybody on it. Lower left is Ross Meehan Foundry, I know, and that today is the Tennessee Pavilion, which is a semi-outdoor open-air facility where every Sunday there is a market, a public market, including artisans and farmers market and such as that. And then again, from the dirtiest city in America to a city that is truly green today. We have a number of LEED certified buildings in the community, and it's really a model. And yet we were separated from our greatest asset, the river. And so in the during the first 10 years of the 21st century, there was a plan put together, which was, and if you'll watch the upper right-hand corner, you'll see kind of the vision for what would happen. It was a busy highway that you couldn't cross to go to the river, and it was transformed into a parkway, and the lower right-hand corner shows you our mayor then and now Senator Bob Corker was almost solely responsible for that. Raised a lot of money, vacuumed all the money out of the couches. And so a lot of public awareness, and we transformed the waterfront, the things that you see there, a $120 million project, which included all the things you see listed here. It upgraded the aquarium, a $30 million upgrade for the aquarium. There at the bottom of the page, you see the Hunter Museum and our Children's Museum, the Creative Discovery Museum, which are both part of us, part of Allied Arts, had a huge infusion, built a huge pier on the river, and again, a wonderful Chattanooga asset was totally transformed. I'm going to very quickly show you some slides illustrating this transformation. The Tennessee Aquarium, the Creative Discovery Museum, the Hunter, which is a true jewel in Chattanooga. Public art played a huge role in all of this, and those of you, there may be some of y'all who went to the session that we had about our new public art park in Chattanooga called the Main Terrain. But and these next dozen slides are show which I'll really I'll show quickly. Just tell the story about the role that public art plays. The pier itself, these light standards are illuminated and are really a wow, especially at night. This is looking down to the aquarium down First Street. This is a dated piece because that piece now is out in East Brainerd, my community, on the left. But you'll get a feel for the public art in Chattanooga. One on the upper left is the most popular, and it's called High Four. And you'll see how the patina where everybody's giving him a high four. But a lot of really cool public art. The passage I believe you were talking to me, our camera operator was talking to me about they had never gone through the passage. Jim, you want to speak to the passage a little bit? That was really...
Well, we'll talk about that later on.
Okay. But Native American artists from Oklahoma designed the passage which tells the story of the Trail of Tears and the beginning of the Trail of Tears, and it is a wow. If you ever go to Chattanooga, it's easy to miss it. I think you said you'd missed it when you'd been there, but great public art that tells the story of the Cherokee Nation, and they came back. These are some of the artists who prepared the pieces, huge medallions that are there. And they came back after they had done the piece and brought a medicine man with them and had a serious ceremony about dedicating this artwork. And it gives great opportunity for teaching. All of this has been driven by the return to the river, and the public art has played a monstrous role in this. This is looking back at 2008, the downtown housing, and not only high-end housing but affordable housing downtown. And there has been a shift from people running off to the suburbs to people coming back to downtown. So we've turned into a city with a healthy heartbeat. This is a look at some of the public art and the Hunter Museum. That bridge is named the Holmberg Bridge. It's my wife doesn't like to go across it because it's lucite and you can see down the road below, but it's really just a dramatic bridge that connects downtown with the Hunter, which they had been separated. Let's see. Now that we're done with all of this, let's see what people are saying now. We know what Walter Cronkite said. Let's see what some others are saying. The New York Times, and these are all very recent publications, wrote that giving credit to artists for the role that they played in our transformation. Travel and Leisure calls Chattanooga a cultural find. Now, that's a little bit of a contrast with dirtiest city in America, and now we're referred to as a cultural find. One of my favorites, Garden and Gun, which is a pretty cool magazine that's kind of like Southern Living meets Outdoor Life or something. But they refer to us as a global model, which we love. And then finally, American Style magazine looked at the mid-sized cities, and by mid-sized they talk about Miami and Charleston and New Orleans, and we ranked number 2 among those in art destinations. So that's a little bit about the transformation of Chattanooga. You know, dirtiest city in America, a place you didn't want to go, place that Jim will tell you that his wife cried when she found out that they were going to have to relocate there. and now people saying these kinds of things. Now, quickly, a little bit about our organization that Jim has chaired and that I'm president of now, and two women back here that are on our staff here, Caroline and Julie. But we've been a force in the arts there since 1969. We were created more or less as a united way for the arts, but we've grown into something much more than that. Over the past 40 years, about more than $50 million has been invested in the arts through our organization. Two key words there, catalyst and convener. We're not naive enough to think that we can do everything, but we like to think that we can bring people together around the table, or that we can be the spark that can get things going, and I think IC 2020 is a good example of that. We do provide support for 14 of the leading arts organizations in Chattanooga. We'll provide 10 to 15% of their support. We see it as general operating support, the stuff that's hard to get, to pay the electric bill or to pay a part of the salaries and that sort of thing. And so we're not initiative specific or program specific, we're organization specific, to where they have money that they know that they can depend on. They go to their mailbox the first of each month and there's money there. We also fund arts education. There was a huge emphasis in this conference talking about arts education. We provide professional training through the Kennedy Center, and also you heard a mention in the last session to the Imagine program. Our goal there is to assure that every child in every school, K through 5, every year has a meaningful arts experience. So all the second graders go to the Nutcracker, all the third graders go to a professional go to the symphony, all the fourth graders go to a professional theater experience. And there's curriculum built around the state standards so that they get pre, during, and post training there. So that's a little bit about Chattanooga and Allied Arts. And now we'll stop and talk about why you're here, about the IC 2020. So it had been 20 years since our last plan. In our strategic plan for 2009 through 2011, one of the statements was to explore cultural planning options and initiate a comprehensive community cultural planning process. We were headed in that direction, and then 2007, 2008 happened, and the economy tanked, and it went on a back burner. But things kind of serendipitously happened where we were approached by the Kresge Foundation saying, we'd like for you to apply for this grant. Those of you in this room, how many times has that happened? Not many. So we got $124,000 in November of 2009. In 2010, we worked with Wolf Brown Associates out of Cambridge, Dr. Tom Wolf, spent time with all of our 14 organizations that you see there, almost like little mini strategic plans. And then as fate would have it, the NEA came out with an offering where we could get another $40,000 if we could match it. Two of our local foundations matched it, plus some money from our community foundation. And so we bled right over into, we were kind of internally looking in 2010. And then last year, we were off to the races with the planning process. This was our original premise, and this was very important that Dr. Wolf really helped us to understand how important it was to start from the beginning asking what the arts could do for the community, not what the community could do for the arts. And that was a very pivotal moment for us to say, what role can the arts play? Arts and culture should and will improve what people care about most in the community. And these two, we'll be happy to share this with you, but also these are going to be posted when the video is posted. And we took a couple, down that road, we took a couple of very important community studies that had already been done as a basis for us to work from to say what people, and you could predict education, the economy, jobs, economic development, that sort of thing. So this was the shared vision was important, and this was and is now our community vision. Now, Jim's not just here to look pretty; he's going to take the rest of it.
I really want to back up a little bit, but we'll talk about what the plan is, but what brought us to the plan beyond what Dan says. This historical look at the impressive Renaissance on the river, as it's been called in Chattanooga, is something that all of us who live in the city are proud of. And we've gotten national and international recognition for it. So you wonder, why would we then take on a difficult task of creating a cultural plan to last out into the 2020 era when we've done so much? We're proud of what we've done. Why would we do that? Well, there are a couple of good reasons. As Dan mentioned, all of the things that we've accomplished have come out of extensive planning processes with communities and citizens from all over. So it was time to do some sort of review, some sort of strategic look at arts and culture. But for many of us, we needed to do it because we needed to involve more people in what we do in the arts. Allied Arts has a goal and objective, and it's part of its motto, to have the arts being for all. But that's really a goal that we always should strive toward. It's an aspirational goal. We're not there yet, and we won't be there, and there's no nirvana that when we get there we say we've reached everybody. But for many in this citizens in this community, they don't celebrate this with us. Chattanooga's African American population is 34%. Its Hispanic population seems low, 5.5%, but in the last 10 years it's gone up 180%. And they live, the Hispanic citizens live predominantly in one part of town, so culture has grown up around that part of town, and so they have a big influence on what's going on with restaurants and their cultural parades and activities. But many of them would not identify with the slides you've seen here about the Hunter and the Renaissance on the river. And although you see those two minorities and other minorities at the museum and downtown on the Riverwalk and all of that, many of them don't feel that they're involved. So the arts for them is not the arts for all. And that's what this cultural plan is all about, to get more community involvement, more individual involvement from all kinds of citizens, and figure out a way to expand our version, our view of what are the arts and what's culture. Somebody once referred to arts and culture to me as the SOBs, the symphony, opera, and ballet, and beyond that, there's no art and there's no culture. Well, for the minority citizens in Chattanooga, they celebrate a broader definition of culture. And we need to start embracing that so that our slides start showing more of what's happening in the communities, and we can learn and grow from that. So what is it? It's an attempt to now come from a broader base to enhance and enrich our community and our region with arts and cultural advances. I think it was Richard Florida in the creative class 10 or 15 years ago that talked about the creative people being the people that drive economic development, that drive growth, and because it involves people and it brings to the area people who are creative. And we haven't talked much about that, but there have been initiatives that have brought individual artists into Chattanooga, and we celebrate that, and we give them low rent housing and to encourage a creative class, more of a creative class, to become involved. And so that's what this is all about. And as I said, it's the document itself, you didn't want to go through it line by line because it comes out of this belief that we can replicate on a wider scale what we've seen in all these slides as we go forward in the community. So what is it? It's a cultural plan that we think is going to help us a lot. And this slide speaks about it in the past tense, and it should be looked at in that context, because the formal plan, the initial plan, the document which on your tables is a summary of, has been completed. But the real plan, the real implementation of the plan is starting, and that's where we have great hope and faith that we'll see if you see us 10 years from now, a number of slides that talk about the growth and enhancement of life in Chattanooga for all of its citizens that will come about because of this plan. And the main thing, it's going to be a community. The plan itself was a community process that provided a blueprint, and that's what the plan is all about, for improving our community now, but more importantly in the future. It's not about Allied Arts, although Allied Arts is the agency responsible for ensuring that it gets done. And it's Allied Arts that is held accountable to all of the citizens, and first a 6-year assessment and annually thereafter to see where we're going. But we're going to run it from volunteers like me, and not have a separate organization or task Allied Arts to do it. We're going to have people from the community help us design what we're doing. So it's not what the arts can do about the community. So who's been involved? We started looking at the need for leadership, broad-based leadership and structure, and we recognized that we couldn't do anything in this plan and beyond without movers and shakers in our community being involved. So we started out with a 50-person blue ribbon steering committee chaired by 2 very respected members of the community, one from business and one a longtime arts patron. You got to get government involved if you're really going to do anything, and we, unlike Nashville, we have a city and county government structure. So the honorary chairs are the mayor of the city and the mayor of the county, but members of the city council and county commission as elected officials are always also involved, and corporate and civic leaders, and the higher ed presidents, and the heads of our local foundations, and philanthropists, and artists, and the nonprofit arts executive directors and board chairs have also been involved. So we had a coalition of people sitting together over a long period of time to try to figure out the details of this plan. So what's been the time frame? When did we get this done? Oops. And Dan talked about the funding, which started because we were doing something else, sustainability. Mm-hmm. And Allied Arts had a number of other RFPs that went out, and once so much progress towards a future had come forth in this initial phase, those RFPs brought in the other funders that we've been talking about. So we've been going at this a little over 2 years, right?
Correct. Yep.
It's not something, if you're thinking about doing it, it's not something you're going to do overnight. It's not something you're going to do very easily. It's something that's going to take a lot of time and effort, but more importantly, if it's going to be successful, you've got to really work at it with getting the proper leadership and structure. Now, Dan, you've talked a little bit about the structure, how the funding. You want to say any more about that?
Well, I think that again, looking at there may be, let's see, there we go. The time frame, the bulk of the work on the external part of the plan The community-wide cultural plan was a year long, basically, although we've been involved a lot longer than that. These are the folks that put the money forward. Again, I mentioned the Kresge Foundation having that first investment of $124,000. Then the NEA putting up 40 and matched 20 and 20 by both the two local foundations, Benwood and Lyndhurst. Our community foundation stepped up with $12,000, a small grant through one of the programs of the Tennessee Arts Commission. And then we ended up putting some money into it ourselves, Allied Arts. But when all was said and done, it was probably about $220,000. That doesn't mean that it would take that much to do this. It's just that the way that the funding was structured and the way that the folks that we chose to run the plan, I think a community could do it for a lot less money.
Yeah.
But it takes a long time too. Either way, it's a long time investment. I had the Times Free Press up there. They helped us not with cash, but they put together a website that created a portal where we were able to put all of our documents, all of our timelines, all of the notes from meetings, who attended, and that sort of thing. And on the sheet on your table, I think on the back of at least one of them, maybe both of them, ImagineChattanooga2020.org. That's still an active website. So you can go in there and learn more than you ever wanted to know about Imagine Chattanooga 2020.
So how did it work? How did this getting together all these important people, laying out a plan, how did it work? It started out with everybody having to kind of agree on a broader definition of arts and culture. Because if you just think of the SOBs, you'll never get the involvement of the citizens that live on the wrong side of the tracks, as it were, or the increasing population of minorities. It's not just Hispanics. We have an elementary and middle school in one section of town, and someone said there are like 15 or 20 languages spoken in that school. So a lot of people have been drawn to Chattanooga because of this economic development. Now, you saw on an earlier slide where VW has put an auto plant there, 3,000 workers, how many dollars, I can't remember.
It's $1 billion investment.
And now we're in a battle to see if we're going to get another car, or whether Mexico is going to have that car, and suppliers are coming in. But it's not just the big VW. Economically, Alstom, which makes boilers, and Wacker Chemicals. I mean, people are getting jobs, but unemployment among minorities is still pretty high. And so we need to get them involved in all what's going on. So instead of just talking about how we work with the symphony and the opera and the Hunter Museum, we started talking about what about the role that African American churches and choirs and choruses, and someone mentioned Professor Roland Carter, who has an organization and looked at traditional African American vocals and the like. So we expanded to talk about the youth directors in the churches, looking at the ethnic art and the folk art that comes from many of our immigrants to the city, crafts. Part of the culture is looking at the heritage of the city and the Native American population there, the parks and rec and educational outlook. So it's a plan to benefit everybody because it is intended for everyone, not just what is seemed by some to be just a few privileged few. So I guess this slide kind of puts it in perspective on the guiding principles: a broader definition of culture, a plan to benefit everyone, a plan with accountability. I think I mentioned earlier that we have to report back to the whole community about how we're doing and what is changing and what is planned, and to get their input more than anything else. And that and other efforts about going out and getting extensive public involvement, much more than we did in the earlier things. So there are these 4 guiding principles that have led us.
Let me mention too, Jim, if I might. You have 3 pieces on the table. One of them is just an extreme overview. This is front and back, has introduction at the top. This is the plan itself, and then when you look online, you'll see that there's a full, the full document is online. There's one here that says major priorities from IC 2020 Working Group, and it's dated June the 13th. We had made a commitment that we would come back to the community after 6 months, and we did. And this was our report back to the community, and what Jim's going to talk about a little bit more. But this tells the action steps and what the goals are 6 months in. And on the back of this, some of y'all may have participated in the Arts and Economic Prosperity Report. It just gives a little detail, the Arts and Economic Prosperity Report. And one other thing, and then Jim, I'll give it back to you, is you have a reprint when we look at one of the benefits of this plan. This is a reprint of an article from the Chattanooga Times Free Press the day that we reported back to the community. This is front page above the fold, and it talks about cultural evolution, and it gives the details of our report and what's been going on. This is worth its weight in gold for us, so just want to mention that.
I want to say a couple more things about this slide. These things are trip easily on the tongue, but have been very, very difficult. We talk about community meetings, focus groups, and interviews. I participated in a lot of those, along with lots of other people, I might add. But many of those meetings are hard to sit through. All those slides about the Renaissance on the river didn't have much resonance to a lot of people in this city. So you got to think about, and when you look at those numbers I told you about the populations of minorities, you recognize that you can't say that we're one of the best mid-sized cities in the country if we're not serving the needs of all of our citizens. So hard to sit through meetings, uncomfortable, a lot of pushback, confrontational one-on-one interviews, but it was input, and we listened, and we're incorporating input from those kinds of meetings to get the community view and to craft a future that involves their image of how the arts and things ought to go. So there are more specifics and details about the plan.
Might mention too, Jim, about these community meetings. We held them in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Our county is pretty far flung, and we went to outlying municipalities. We went to minority neighborhoods. We held meetings all over the community, and they were very well attended, and people were very engaged, and we were very proud of that.
If you talk about the Renaissance on the river and the downtown and the people moving in and all of that, but there's a Martin Luther King Boulevard street in Chattanooga. Prominent on that street is the Bessie Smith Cultural Center and an African American museum. You don't see much about them in the great slides about Chattanooga. And part of this plan is to make that cultural heritage of one of the world's best blues singers relevant. As a part of a downtown development group, I helped host a group of citizens from Sweden who were coming to, and they'd heard about the river and the like, and we're trying to make them amenable to having a Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga. But we had them on the electric buses, and we took them to the Hunter, and did a string quartet and all from the symphony and the like. And so the head of this delegation, as we were on the bus going to some other SOB event, said, "So when do we go to the Bessie Smith Hall?"
Oh, boy.
And we hadn't even thought to put it on the agenda. And here's someone from Sweden who knows about Bessie Smith and thinks about the beauty and the grace and honor of Chattanooga by this figure. And there's a cultural center devoted to her. And we haven't been showing our prominent visitors that. So that's the kind of transformational thinking we've been going about and incorporating into this cultural plan. And we talk about it as a plan is finished, but the real work begins now with the implementation and the details of the implementation, because it's not going to be a slam dunk easy thing to do in the next year or so. We have to work our way through and get continuing input from everybody and make sure that we have the broadest definition of diversity. If you go to the symphony in Chattanooga, and I have season tickets, but you go there, the average age is 60, I think.
At best.
So diversity in that sense of improving diversity can mean doing things that bring more young people out to our events. Many of our young people don't want to put on a coat and tie and go to the things that some of us have been enjoying going through for years. And many of our older citizens have other needs that we've not been fulfilling. So I co-chair the diversity panel, task force of people, and we started listening who's diverse in this community. What is diversity? And a 14-point thing came about. And so we're having to make sure that we don't just think about African Americans and Hispanics when we talk about improving and enhancing diversity. So Dan, 4 big efforts have come out of all of those discussions and all of those meetings and that structure in the leadership. So why don't you talk about the 4?
All right. I'm not going to take the time to read all this. I'll allow you to peruse it, and again, you'll be able to get a hard copy of this. But arts and cultural education, we actually ended up probably with half a dozen that you'll see here, but we have focused on 4 areas in the in the implementation of it early on. This is probably a 10-year plan, so it's not like we're going to tackle everything in the first 6 months. But you'll see the things about arts and cultural education that would take a lot of money to do, and we're doing some of them. I mentioned the Imagine program, but in economic development, you see the goals there, the broad-reaching goals about using the arts in economic development and cultural tourism. We'll speak in a little bit about a new web tool that has been created that was launched this morning in Chattanooga. Diversity, and Jim's going to talk a little bit more about this in a moment. He's been talking about diversity, but we're doing what I think is some really meaningful early steps around grants that are going to push the arts and culture out into a broader audience. Downtown, we attended the session that was for Art Space, and we have right now we have an organization that stepped up and made us a great offer on a really cool building, 30 years for $1 a year, which is a pretty good deal. And there are some other things that we're trying to knit together in downtown to create not just one arts hub, but a kind of a network or corridor downtown. And we're also looking at how we can help public art. These are things that are somewhat on a back burner, but looking at public safety and health care, this is not really on a back burner, but it's something that we're more doing than talking about doing. Something that is of interest that I think that was actually mentioned in here an hour or so ago was training for nonprofits. We have actually put together a series through the Association for Fundraising Professionals, which is a really great series that over a 4-month period we have 7 training courses that are being taught by stellar professors from throughout the country. It's being funded by one of our local foundations, where we have all of our arts organizations that are under our umbrellas in one session, and then one for the community and another for other nonprofits. So strengthening nonprofits, we're looking at how to combine resources and do some co-location of services and some sharing of resources. But the outcomes, and one of the great outcomes in my mind, not just that this was on the front page of the paper, but if you turn over to the back and you look at, these people are named as far as leading it. If you look at diversity, you see Jim here listed along with Lily Wills, who they are a dynamite team, and each one of these areas we have a member of our Allied Arts Board. You'll see them listed there first in this list, and then leaders from the community, and they have in each one of these areas there is a task force or a work group that is taking the plan and saying, now, how do we put wheels under this? How do we make this work in the community? And there'll be pieces that come out of that that are very appropriate for Allied Arts. There'll be pieces that come out of it that are for other organizations or individuals to take and run with. And Jim, what if you talk about the diversity piece and the grants and that? Because I think that's a great poster child for what we're trying to do.
I've talked a lot about the need for inclusiveness in this plan. And so we don't have a diversity section that we talk about all these other things and then, oh yes, we're going to do some diversity thing. Mm-hmm. Inclusiveness is included in all aspects of the guiding subcommittees that come out of this. And I've talked enough about, I think, why the need, but we've already gotten the question in these meetings, how can we get involved? We don't have any money. Are you guys going to help us? Because the Hunter Museum gets money from the Tennessee Arts Commission and all. So Allied Arts has been able to give for diversity, what is it, $60,000?
Yeah, the interesting thing is our board carved out $40,000 for diversity grants. We gave this report in June, and we told about that.
Yeah.
We reported about that, and in the crowd was a county commissioner that at that meeting, immediately following that meeting, he stepped up and said, I like this, and I like it so much that I want to give you another $20,000 out of my discretionary funds. So our 40 became 60 in that one meeting. So Jim's committee has $60,000.
So we put out an RFP, not an RFP, but a grant application thing. You don't have to be a 501c3. You don't have to have an approved grant before. It's not a complicated grant application process. And I guess Rodney, who's not in here, right, reported that we have 61.
We had, as you might imagine, we have $60,000. We have 61 applications that total 4 times that $60,000. But also, you might talk about the faith-based.
It's people that you've never seen on the art scene. Mm-hmm. So that jump starts what we're trying to do in diversity. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned another one you were...
Faith-based, about the role in that.
Yeah. That's a real opportunity to get the churches involved, particularly in the African-American community. Mm-hmm. So we've made some steps already, and we will be looking at those grant applications in a couple of weeks.
Next, yeah.
Week after next. And we're going to actually give some heretofore unknown arts and cultural entities an opportunity to start participating in more than a Renaissance on the river, but a Renaissance that involves all of the citizens. Dan, I think we talked enough about details. Let's see if anybody has any questions about it, because you have summaries of what we've done. You can go to the website, and you can get a full-blown copy of the plan if you're more interested beyond our putting it into context for you. So any questions or comments?
The diversity grant, what was the goal of the diversity grants? Were they to promote diverse art forms or to promote programs that would increase diversity?
Both.
Both, all of the above.
There, and I don't have that with me, and maybe somebody can help me out, but there were 4 clearly stated goals, and they revolved around one of making the arts available where they're not traditionally available, 2 of investing in arts forms that we have not traditionally invested in, 3 that they are uniting, they bring people together, and the 4th one, which is not as is that there be some positive economic impact, and it's better stated than that. That's just from memory, but and the organizations that are applying, and we were thrilled, absolutely thrilled with the applications. What's interesting is, and you can appreciate this, we had a deadline of 5 p.m. Was it this past Monday?
Yeah.
This past Monday?
Yeah, it was this past
5 p.m. That morning we had 11 applications. By 5 p.m. we had 61. So that's human nature.
So these are people who don't normally put in grants because they're not
Right.
given the opportunity. They don't have the structure. They don't have a 501c3. They don't know anything about grants.
Yeah.
But they knew how to go after some programs that were interesting to them.
And one of the things is we're bending over backwards to try to help them. Rather than look for ways not to give them the money, we're trying to look for ways to give them the money. The committee had a great discussion around should they be a 501c3 and ultimately said no. No, they have to be an organization.
It can't
Not
be
going to write a check to an individual.
Can't have individual artists, although many of them wanted to be involved.
Yeah, but individual artists may participate.
Put together coalitions.
And if you looked at large groups, our outlying municipalities were a group that's gone after them. Our local nonprofits have applied. Some of the human service organizations that are weaving the arts into what they're doing. Neighborhood associations. Those are the chief, and churches. And those are the chief organizations that have applied.
We're delighted. Julie?
I was just going to make a comment. If you go to Allied Arts website, you can click under the grants. You can
Great.
click on there, and there's a form that tells what the goals, specific goals.
Thank you, Julie. I know they bail us out.
We have another question here.
Yes, sir. He wants to get the microphone to you so that it shows up on the on the video.
I think the Renaissance in Chattanooga is just phenomenal. But as a learning opportunity for us and maybe for yourself,
Okay.
and going back and looking at what was done over the last 10, 15 years, what was done wrong, and what would you have done differently?
Oh, wow. When Jim gets back, I'm going to let him chime in on this because he was intimately involved with this process. I knew what everybody knew. I wasn't as intimately involved. And it's a continuing process. I know that. I know that we're learning from our mistakes, but I don't know that I could articulate exactly, what might be done wrong. I think part of it could easily be what Jim has said, that it is so focused on downtown and the river that it, the whole community is benefiting from that. But I think that really the types of things that we're about to do through these small grants and such as that pushes it out into the nooks and crannies of the community are perhaps something that we did not do quite as well. But I'll also defer to him when he gets back in. I'll put was there another question somebody had? Okay.
Your Imagine program?
Yes.
With arts education?
Yes.
You said you also had Kennedy Center training for the teachers.
Yes.
Were those, and the curriculums based around wherever the students went, were those in conjunction with the teacher training?
They weren't. There were 2 separate programs. Now, some of the teachers who have attended the Kennedy Center workshops are involved in the Imagine program, but they're not knit together. The paint a picture for the Nutcracker and then I'll switch over to the Kennedy Center. The way it works is that it is not required that every class participate. That said, Caroline, how many? Caroline takes the reservations, so I know there were all but how many? Yeah. You're talking about 40 some odd, 40 some odd classes of second graders or schools, I guess, and they all but one participated. And I think we learned later there's just miscommunication on that one. So you've got a large number, 3,500, 4,000 students in each grade level, and they're attending these. The curriculum is prepared for each one of those, and there's instructions on how to use the curriculum, but that's separate from the Kennedy Center, which is teaching arts integration. It's generally a 2-day. We pay for subs. The teachers come for 2 days, and they're taught techniques on how to integrate the arts, because they're a little separate. Question while you were gone that I deferred to you somewhat.
Okay.
Was the gentleman was asking, we learned a lot of lessons. You want to phrase it again?
As a learning opportunity for all of us, the Renaissance Revolution has been, or the river Renaissance has been phenomenal.
Yes.
To listen back over the last 10, 15 years, what would you have done differently? What do you think might have been done wrong? Renaissance.
Well, we tout the fact that the Chattanooga Way has these public meetings where we invite anybody to come and put your ideas on the table. But in truth, the way that was advertised or not advertised, the venues we selected for people to come, it's very intimidating, for example, for someone from the MLK district to come up to a meeting in the Hunter Museum of Art with all the fancies and all. So we didn't reach out into those communities and bring them along with us. And we didn't have as many of those meetings in their space. People told us in these ad hoc meetings and in these focus group meetings, don't create a program or ideas and invite us to come to it. Come down to where we are and let us get involved in creating those programs. So the Chattanooga Way is a good way of doing things. You don't have just a very small number of individuals that create without any kind of input in anything, but the type of input and the way you really get people involved and the way you really seek out leaders in those communities is what looking back at it, I would like to have seen us do a lot better job of doing, because we didn't really get much input at all from the larger parts of the community. The elite designed these and made a little bit of effort to get some input, but going forward, that's going to be where we start, with the community and the leaders of that community.
And I think the distinction there too, I think that mainly what you're referencing is the planning processes in the 80s and such as that. And I think that what Jim talked about influenced our thinking a little bit, in that we had meetings at the Bethlehem Center on the south side of Chattanooga, and we had meetings out in the other communities. So I think that we moved, not perfectly, but I think in this process we moved closer to that in engaging people.
And guess what? We're still learning. We know we're not perfect yet. And we'll have to continue to sit through uncomfortable meetings in venues that we don't normally go to, and really, really come to listen and value. Out of all the conflict that comes up in such meetings, pick out the valuable things that we can do to get that anger level down and get more people involved.
And I think too that the work group that Jim is is helping to chair around diversity is a great example, because as far as Allied Arts is concerned, we kind of took our hands off the wheel. It's going where it's going, and we're providing the staff support, we're providing the administrative support, we're wanting to encourage, and we're wanting to communicate and get people at the table. But
we don't meet at Allied Arts.
No.
And that's a change. We meet at the Bessie Smith Hall or the Urban League, and people feel more comfortable coming to those venues. And you'll get more natural leaders that come out of such meetings than you will if you expect people to come to Allied Arts or overlooking the river at the Hunter Museum, and people feel intimidated by not having been in such meetings before.
And I think the decisions that have been made have been the committees.
Yeah.
I don't know personally. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I ever would have said they don't have to be a 501c3. That's just kind of in my genes. I think that I think that. But that decision now that's made, I'm going, that's pretty cool, because you look at the organizations that stepped up, and some of the richest requests, I don't mean rich in dollars, I mean in just vibrant requests, are from organizations that haven't cleared the hurdle
They're
yet.
emerging arts organizations, and many of them never would call themselves arts organizations, but the cultural part of it is what's attracted to them. Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate the fact that you said that the budget was $220,000, but you feel like it could be done for much less.
Yeah.
Could you give me a bare bones budget,
Oh,
like
wow.
what you think we could do it for?
Well, and I think that the bulk of our cost was for the consultant that we used. If you have the talent in your community to facilitate and write, much of that goes away. And it doesn't have to be done on the scale that this is done. I think it's less money and it's more about organization and time commitment.
But I would say that, and that'll get the job done, but I would say that if you really want a top-of-the-line kind of plan, you need to have a consultant that's done it. And Tom Wolfe has done it in 15 cities. He's done these cultural plans, and I'm not pushing for him.
No.
But we learned a lot about someone guiding us down the path of what to look for and things he's seen in other cities, people like him have seen in other cities. So if you can get money from whatever source, get someone who has some experience in community planning around these kinds of things, because as he has told us, many of the themes are the same.
Yeah.
They vary a little bit, and he prepared us for a lot of the things we encountered as we went along. So that's my view. But if you don't have the money and you need to do something, and you have well-rounded facilitators in your community, you can
So $220,000, most of it went to Commonwealth to do this?
Yeah. That was the bulk of the expense was there, and we don't begrudge it.
And it wasn't just him. He had associates.
Right. His staff spent a lot of time on this, and we had two other people from his organization that came in, but it was chiefly him. And one thing that runs through my mind, and I know our time, I think we're like 10 minutes away, something. The one thing that runs through my mind when you talk about what the Tennessee Arts Commission could do for us statewide, if there were a planning template that we had, and if there was a kind of a cadre of individuals that they felt like had the skill set and that they would work out a bulk buy on it or something. I mean, that's something that we might explore, so that if this community wanted to do something to scale along this way, that here's the steps, and rather than $220,000, it might cost the community $50,000. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
I'd say also watch what we're doing and follow us online, and as our accountability themes work out, because there are some bite-sized parts of this thing you can take and decide to work on, and we'd be glad to work with anybody who's starting to think about just some small piece of how you might want to do some of this.
There's a question that I'll ask Jim that we're going to kind of put, well, just the takeaways, what the benefits have been of doing this.
Well, for me, who's lived in this community over 20 years now, who's connected with the African American community. I mean, I've been on the Urban League Board and work in that community, but I'm known primarily for working in the larger majority community. I have gotten insights as I started into this very thoughtful process with leaders from around the city and just regular workers from around the city. I've learned a lot about how people cannot feel proud of the Tennessee Aquarium, which I used to head. I mean, at first I thought, well, who would not like that? I mean, it's something we built on our own. We raised the money on our own. We have 1 million visitors a year. School kids go there. Some of your kids go there. But people say, I wasn't involved in talking about whether we build an aquarium, and I didn't help plan what kinds of things we have, whether it's freshwater, saltwater, or how we do the educational things. And all I would want to have done is to have been asked. And first we didn't know who to ask or how to ask, but we're learning that as we start this process.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Here comes your mic.
As you've developed this expanded vision of what arts and culture are to Chattanooga, what kind of surprises have you had? Has there been something that should have been identified a long time ago that really just surfaced now?
One big surprise for me was I didn't know there was an India association, like not American India, but India. And the head of that organization came to one of our focus groups, and he started laying out all the cultural things they've been doing in Chattanooga that I never heard of. And Susan Robinson, who runs Arts and Education Council, has had a cultural fest, a one-day event in the park annually to talk about, to have culture, dances. I didn't know a lot of those even existed. So a learning has been, there's a lot of art and culture going on in Chattanooga. All we've got to do is put it under a larger umbrella and advertise it and use this website and use other kinds of things to learn, to teach all of us more about the beauty of this community and of the people that are living in it. That for me is the greatest learning that I've had, and there have been some others.
I think for me, from the standpoint of Allied Arts, it's been that we've maybe been a mile wide and an inch deep, and we've been trying to be too many things to too many people, and that we need to sharpen our focus and really define what we are about. This plan is driving us right now. We've somewhere here there's a piece of paper that we have a new organization chart, and our board's focused on the plan, and that's what's driving us. It is a balancing of how we spend our resources, that those 14 organizations that you saw are still important to us, but they're not the whole world. I think that if you dial back not too long ago, that was our customer, was those 14 organizations, and now the community is our customer. Now, they're an important constituency, but they're not our customer. And when you look at the benefits of doing this plan, we kind of narrowed it down to 3. A recognition of the value of the arts and the role that they do and can play in addressing community priorities. One of the goals in the plan that if you were to look at it is, it's a very specific goal. Our chamber was organizing a 40-year plan.
40-year economic development.
Yeah. A 14-county, 3-state, and it just started, and one of our goals was we want a seat at the table. They have 14 counties, they have 30 people sitting on the steering committee. I'm one of them. That was our goal. And already we're reaping benefits from that, of that committee, which is very important, realizing that the arts is important. A common vision, having something that we can go back to and that we can rally around, and the elevation of the profile of allied arts. And all of that's happened.
I chair another organization, the Public Education Foundation, and we have been partially responsible for Chattanooga getting a STEM school, had the magic words of science and technology. And we've been able to incorporate into that effort, because there's a lot of money and effort and hype about that from the president on down, to inject the arts into that thing. So we're learning that we need to step out in a lot of different venues, and organizations like Allied Arts and Public Education Foundation need to talk more together about doing things about which we have common interest. So that's good. And we have a last question as we approach the 11:15 hour.
Well, thank y'all so much, and go to the website and look at the plan, and come to Chattanooga and spend some money.
Right.